What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Guys, we need to talk about this Colts defense a little bit more. But before we get into it, just want to say that this episode is presented by Prize Picks. Be sure to visit the Prize Picks app today and use the code BTJ for a $100 deposit match when you sign up. Guys, this is turning out to be worse than any Colts fan would have possibly imagined. This is a really, really bad defense right now for the Indianapolis Colts. And we kind of need to try to figure out and understand why it's so bad. Just to give some context here to the Indianapolis Colts. So far, the quarterbacks that they've had to face are CJ Stroud and the Texans. And then you also have Malik Willis and the Green Bay Packers. Now, to give context, in the first game, the Colts allowed Stroud to complete 75% of his passes for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns, and also allowed Joe Mixon to run 30 times for 160 yards and 1 touchdown. Ultimately, they ended up rushing for over 200 yards in that game specifically. And then in this Green Bay game, facing Malik Willis, who completed almost 75% again as well, and also, or actually even higher than that. And then for 122 yards in his first touchdown as an NFL quarterback. And Josh Jacobs ran 32 carries for 151 yards, with Green Bay totaling over 260 yards of total rushing. So through the first couple games, Cody, 1 turnover for this Colts defense, and the quarterbacks collectively have been completing almost 80% of their passes, have thrown for about 350, just over 350 yards. But the most pressing issue is that the Colts have now given up almost 500 yards of offense by rushing the football. Cody, it's safe to say that this Colts defense is by far the worst rushing defense in the NFL by a long shot. And we're only 2 weeks into it. We got to get to the bottom of this. What is going through your mind of just what is going on with this Colts defense?
That is the question, isn't it? I think, Derek, honestly, it's guys being far too comfortable in that defensive front seven. It's kind of insane, man, because you look at how much you've invested into that defensive line. Now, I know you've had, a few things with, some injuries, but again, pretty much for the entirety of the 2 games, you've had the majority of your players being relatively healthy, or playing in some capacity. So I don't know what the issue is, because you have very much invested a lot into the trenches. That's one of Chris Ballard's core philosophies, Derek, and it is completely failing you right now. Like, you haven't been able to stop anybody. You couldn't stop, I think at this point, any team running the football. That's how bad it's been. Like you said, not just bad, but historically bad. The Green Bay Packers had over 200 yards rushing in the first half alone, which is embarrassing in itself. And it just seems like there's a lack of effort, a lack of execution. And Derek, I said this in the recap. It's your guys that you expect better from. It's your Zaire Franklins, your EJ Speeds, your Kenny Moores, your Grover Stewarts even. Those guys that you expect, especially in the run game, to do some stuff, they have frankly been terrible. Kenny Moore and Zaire Franklin cannot tackle. EJ Speed looks like he's afraid to go up and make a tackle. I don't know what's going on with this unit. And also, by the way, look at how much you invested in re-signing guys and bringing in Raekwon Davis in the offseason, only for you to have, by far, like you mentioned, the worst run defense in the NFL. So I don't know what it is. Is it a Charlie Partridge thing? Is it a Gus Bradley thing? Because with Nate Ollie, it wasn't great, but it certainly wasn't to this level. And you didn't really go crazy in terms of losing. In fact, we all thought the run defense would be better this year, because you signed a guy like Raekwon Davis, because now you have Grover Stewart back and healthy. But it's been the complete opposite. I don't know what the issue is, man. Besides just a lack of execution and just a lack of fundamental football. I mean, that's what it comes down to, man. It's like, the defensive line, especially on the edges, it feels like they just get shredded. Like nobody at defensive end can contain the edge to save their lives. The linebackers
Yeah.
can't make tackles, they won't come up. Obviously, the defensive linemen aren't doing their job in the interior because, offensive linemen are getting to the second level and just doing whatever they want to. And even like when you get stops, it's like wrapping and holding on and pushing him back. Like it seems like even when he made tackles on Josh Jacobs, he was still able to get a couple yards because you just were not doing fundamental things that every team, not just NFL, but football teams in general, teach you to do when you tackle. Right? Let's be honest, the Colts defense in terms of tackling look like a middle school team. Like they don't tackle. They don't tackle to save their lives. It's embarrassing. And so I don't know what the issue is. I mean, a lot of people, you can point the fingers to Gus Bradley, Charlie Partridge, the players, Chris Ballard, all these things. But I will say this, Derek, for how much as you invested in your front seven, you should not be anywhere near as poor as you've been. It's inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. So pick your poison on what you want to blame. I think every single unit, every single part of this team, I think it's a total team thing from personnel to also, honestly, just, the players, like everything. I think it all comes together and plays a part in this. But I guess for the overwhelming question is who gets the majority of the blame? That's kind of where it comes down to. And I think, Derek, for me, I don't know. Like, it's weird because I look at it and I say, this is a unit that has proven they can be a really good run defense. So we know it's not the talent. Like, the talent's there. Like, we've seen it. We saw it even last year. Like, the Colts, they weren't great against the run, but they were serviceable enough. Like, they weren't that bad. It was the pass defense that was the issue last year, right?
Yeah.
You have guys in Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner who can stop the run. We know Kwity Paye can stop the run. We know Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed can come up and stop the run. So for me, it's like, I don't know what the issue is. We know the players are there and they've done it at a high level. So obviously the players will always deserve the blame because they're always out there and they're making, they're either making plays or not. But to me, Derek, it has to come down to something with the coaching. That's where it comes down to me. Players will obviously always get the blame for lack of execution. But for me, it's like something fundamentally is wrong with this defense. Like they are not doing something fundamentally right. They're not doing what they have done in the last couple of years in terms of stopping the run. Something is wrong, and they got to figure it out.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, like, is it really the coaching? Because, like, you have the same coaching with the same scheme and the same players and all of this other stuff. You have the same exact roster. Yes, we had some issues with some injuries. Like, yes, Ebukam missing the beginning of the year certainly sucks. But Ebukam is not the reason why this team is giving up 200 plus rushing yards a game because of him. Now, I mean, in this game against the Green Bay Packers, yes, DeForest Buckner went out, but the majority of the damage for them already said that DeForest Buckner, the majority of the damage was already done before DeForest Buckner went out with that injury. So it's not the injuries that have been the biggest problem when it comes to this front seven. But like we saw in the first game, you said, oh, you didn't end up protecting against the run because you were selling out to try to get to protect that three-headed monster that you're facing against the Texans. So Colts fans were like, okay, we'll buy that. You guys look terrible because you sold out on trying to stop the run. Okay. Now you go to the next game where you didn't sell out and you put 8 in the box almost every snap and you still couldn't do it. As a matter of fact, you looked worse. So for me, Cody, I look back at it and I say to myself, I don't think it's the coaching. This defensive scheme has been the same for the last 3 years. In 2022, it was really good. Even when that Colts offense was terrible, we had at times a top 10 defense in the league. Legitimately. I think you and I could sit here and agree that defense in 2022 was the only reason the Colts were in any game. Because they actually had players. You had a secondary that could stop guys from making big plays down the field. And therefore, you could then play that scheme of Gus Bradley's a little bit better because it results in the secondary guys being left on islands all by themselves, knowing where to be, and allowing that front four to kind of do what needs to be done. And that's why that was able to be done, is they could put more emphasis on stopping the run. But now you're in a situation where you and I keep talking about it, Cody. You're missing your outside corner, your best outside corner. You were missing your safety in this game. And we already knew you were missing an edge guy. And then you're probably going to be missing Buckner for an extended period of time. And Laiatu Latu got hurt late in this game as well. So, but like I said, I don't really want to put too much emphasis on the injuries being the reason why this team is struggling as bad as it is. Like, I get it. Like, injuries suck, and that definitely can mean your team is sucking. But, I mean, Cody, this is on a whole nother level. This is a whole nother level of bad. Like, last year we said this Colts defense was bad. I mean, this is bad upon bad. Like, this puts any defensive performance last year to shame. Cody, I don't think there was a time last year, now correct me if I'm wrong, I have no idea, but I'm not entirely sure there was many games last year, Cody, even when Grover Stewart was out for those 6 games with that suspension. I'm fairly certain that there wasn't any games last year where the Indianapolis Colts were giving up an average of 235 yards a game running the football. I'm fairly certain. And this time around, it's not even without Grover Stewart. You have Grover Stewart in there. Like you said, we are paying you extended DeForest Buckner for the next 2 years. You brought Grover Stewart back on $13 million a year. You extended Zaire Franklin. You extended EJ Speed. You brought back Kenny Moore. You brought all these guys back. And then you said for Raekwon Davis to come in here and be that focal point when Grover Stewart's not in there, to be that guy that can help stop the run in the middle of the field. It ain't happening. It ain't happening nowhere. So, and we were always talking about the secondary. Like, the secondary has no chance, Cody, because you can't stop the run anyway. Like, I can't even get mad at the secondary players, because if you can't stop the run, then your secondary is doomed from the start. I mean, yeah, we're getting decimated with injuries, but they have no shot. They have no shot.
Well, that's what I was saying in the recap, and we talked a little bit about it, is like, if you would tell me that the secondary isn't your biggest issue, like if you would have told me even like a couple weeks ago that your secondary was not going to be your biggest issue on defense, I would have probably laughed in your face. I mean, I think we both would have been like, yeah, right. Like, we expect this Colts defense, while it may not be like a top 5 rush defense, like we expect it to be at least halfway competent, right? We were all worried, like you talked about this young secondary, about all these issues. I mean, I think Derek, honestly, Nick Cross today, who we all talked about how that was the biggest question mark on the defense, right? Like, he looked like one of the best players out there. That's how bad it's been. And Nick Cross, to his credit, I think he's looked pretty fairly good in the last couple games he's played the season. But still, like, that's how bad it is. It's like a unit, that's what makes it so disappointing, is like a unit that you invested so much into, you believed into, has frankly failed you. Like, the core aspect of your team, which is why I think even more so you talk about coaching, because look at the investment you placed into it, Derek. Like, look at the real investment you placed into this front seven. Even if you want to talk about just the defensive line, like, you've invested so much into this unit. Like, at some point, it can't be just the player's fault. You know what I mean? Like, it can't just be that all the time. Like, you had made a serious investment, if you're Chris Ballard, into this unit. And look at the results. It hasn't been anywhere near what you need it to be. And players who routinely are making tackles and making big plays aren't doing it this year, Derek. Like, Kenny Moore specifically, like, he had a chance at a pick today. He let it go right through his hands and touchdown. Like, that kind of stuff. Like, things that you expect players like that, of that caliber, at least in your mind, to make. Like, and that's what's the biggest issue with it, is like, especially in the run defense, like guys that you expect to be really good at that specific part of their game aren't doing that. And that's what's frustrating considering how much you've invested into that unit, how many draft picks, how much money you've dished out. Like, that's why it's so infuriating. Is like, what else can you do if you're Chris Ballard? Like, you've invested so much into this unit.
Is it worth spending it? Well, here's the question to that. Is that money being spent in the right place? That's the issue I'm having. Because like I said before, that 2022 defense, that was a defense that could really be useful for this kind of team right now with a quarterback that is trying to figure things out. Because this defense can't do anything right. My issue is we saw in 2022, Gus Bradley had a above average defense, honestly, a pretty good defense. Even at times was a great defense. Not saying they were great, but they were a good defense in 2022. And the main reason for that, you had Isaiah Rodgers, who, first of all, you had defensive players that were actually healthy and defensive players that were actually available. That's first of all. Second of all, you had Isaiah Rodgers, who, hate him, like him, doesn't matter. He still was a good cornerback. He was a good cornerback. And then on top of that as well, you then had Stephon Gilmore, who, again, if he was a one-season wonder, doesn't matter. He was still a really good corner in that season for Indianapolis. He was locking down everyone, right? And then you had Rodney McLeod, who, maybe wasn't great in pass coverage, but he was able to make tackles in the run game. Like he ran downfield with a full head of steam and he made plays. And then you had Julian Blackmon, who was actually available at that time. So your secondary was so much better at that time. And, I'm not entirely sure. Was Bobby Okereke still there with us in 2022?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And a lot of people are starting to say, like, I'm starting to question if letting him go was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I can't say I disagree.
Right.
I mean, I would look at how bad the linebackers are right now. I mean, it's just, you're right. It doesn't seem like anyone's doing their job right.
Here's my question.
And I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how much of that goes into what? Is it the players not taking responsibility for themselves? Is it the coaching not getting them in the positions they need to be successful? Is it Chris Ballard for investing money in the wrong places for the wrong type of people? I don't know. Well, it feels like it's a culmination of everything just mixing in all at once.
Here's my thing.
I mean, because in that first game, Gus Bradley had to stop what he was doing with his defensive scheme because knowing that the secondary needed help, and that's why we screwed up in the first game, right? Like, that's what he said.
Okay.
So, guys, football season is right around the corner. Definitely got to make sure you're getting in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. You guys can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks, guys. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with any entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. I mean, guys, look, I'm looking at some of these entries here. And if you're an Indianapolis Colts fan like myself, which you probably are because you're on here right now, well, I'm just looking at some of these season numbers here. And some of the stuff for Anthony Richardson, I have to get in on. Guys, we have one right here where it's 7.5 on the season rushing touchdowns for Anthony Richardson. Folks, Anthony Richardson had 4 rushing touchdowns in just 10 quarters of football last season. What do you think he's going to do this year when he's actually healthy and fully capable of going? Now, obviously, they're playing into the fact that they think he might get injured. Anthony Richardson doesn't. That 7.5 is an easy more when you want to talk into that one, guys. So make sure you are getting in on the action of getting some of these numbers for Anthony Richardson and other Colts players as well. Remember, guys, be sure to download the Prize Picks app today and use the code BTJ for your first deposit match up to $100.
Well, here's my thing, Derek. Talking about investing in the right places. Look back at that 2022 defense and look at the players you had. Pretty much the same players. I mean, you had a couple different guys, but like you look at it, like you had Zaire Franklin for the majority of that season, right, as a starter, because remember Shaq got hurt and Zaire was in there. You know, the only thing, yeah, you mentioned Bobby Okereke, but really outside of that, Derek, in the run game, especially in the front seven, like what major differences outside of Bobby Okereke did you have? That's why when you talk about it, did you invest in the right places, specifically in the run game? I don't think you did. I don't think you invested in the wrong places. Like you invested in the places that have gotten you to where we could talk about and view this defense before the season as a defense that could actually be competent against the run. Because you had Grover, you had DeForest, you had Quiddy Pay, who, in the last couple seasons, he could actually stop the run pretty well. So my biggest thing is not that. And that's why I go back to the coaching is like every single year, Derek, with similar personnel, your defense has gotten worse. Now, I understand what you're talking about with specifically in the secondary, but your run defense has gotten worse every single year under Gus Bradley. Every single year. You look at it. Every year they've gotten worse with the similar personnel. So what's the deal here? To me, the common denominator is not the players, it's the coach. It's like every time, if your defense is progressively getting worse, that's on the coach to me. With the same personnel, like that's on the coach. If you believe in this personnel as much as you believe in it, then what are you saying about your coach? That's kind of where I go with it, especially in the run game. That's my argument for why I would blame the coach.
Mm-hmm. I totally get it. I just think I totally agree with you in the sense that when it comes to like the front four being as good, if not better. I mean, the front four should be better right now, like than what it was in 2022. But the secondary is far worse than what it used to be. So, I mean, I don't know, like, if there's been enough emphasis. And I mean, and listen, this is going to come back. I think it does have to come back on Ballard a little bit because we kept talking about it after the first game. Like, we have no depth.
Yeah.
We have no depth anywhere. At defensive tackle, you have none. Taven Bryan, Adetomiwa, Eric Johnson, and Raekwon Davis, they're all trash. They're all trash right now. You have nothing behind DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. None. And on top of it, with the edge rushing guys, you already lost Ebukam. That's unfortunate. But Latu hasn't done anything to start the year out. Nothing. And I mean, the linebackers, like you said, are all trash right now. Franklin and EJ Speed have not made a difference in the games. And the secondary is just doomed because they're already getting hit with injuries and nobody can stop the run. So, like, I'm not sure. I don't understand it. I feel like it's the perfect mix of everything just falling apart all at once. Because remember, Ballard said, we like our guys.
Yep.
Well, guess what, Ballard? Your guys are getting destroyed everywhere. Everywhere. There's nothing good about this Colts defense. Nothing. There's nothing. You couldn't even we couldn't get after the quarterback. In that first game, we did it for the first half, but then just magically couldn't do it anymore. We haven't been able to stop the run. This might go down as one of the worst defensive rushing defenses that the Colts have had in their history. With the way this is coming out, like the Colts might be giving up an average of 170 plus yards a game rushing the football. They're trash at stopping the run. Even in this game against the Green Bay Packers, when you put an emphasis on stopping the run, you still couldn't do it. You did worse. So I'm not sure. I don't know if it's just the talent overall, but I mean, it's so baffling to me because I did not expect the defense to be the biggest problem with this team, at least not from the rushing defense's perspective. I just don't know, man. I don't know. And seems to be no answers for the Indianapolis Colts because, you got Shane Steichen coming over here saying like, oh, I have full confidence that the Gus Bradley and the defense is going to figure it out. It's like, I don't expect you to tell the truth, but I don't want you to have to lie about it, but I don't expect him to tell the truth, but like to sit there and still say that you have confidence in it. I know you don't. I know you don't. It's a lie. I know it is. You can't possibly sit there and look at this stuff and say to yourself, oh yeah, like I have confidence we'll figure it out. No one else does. I'm sure even Ballard behind closed doors doesn't believe in it. He's watching the same games. He knows his ass is on the line. It has to be. It has to be because this defense is just not doing anything. I don't know whose fault it is mainly, Cody, but I mean, there are so many things wrong with this defense, and it's sad.
It's so sad. Yeah, they got to figure it out, man, because it's going to be a long season if they don't figure it out. And especially like the offense, as much as we rag on the defense hasn't been great either. Like, I want to definitely be fair to that. Like, the defense gave the team opportunities in that second half. No question. They gave them opportunities. And for as bad as they were stopping the run, they actually did hold Green Bay to only 16. So, I mean, again, it's against the backup quarterback. But the defense, I think, has shown at least some positive things. And then you have, of course, the 250-yard first half. And you're like, okay, what the heck? But, they've been really, really bad. But they've also shown a few positive things. So if they can, I don't know what you can do at this point for the rush defense. But there are a few things they've done, and the offense probably hasn't done them a lot of favors, especially in this game, because they only scored 10 points. So, I mean, defense, for as much faults as they have in the run game, they definitely, in terms of third down and stuff, they were able to hold Green Bay a little bit. So that's at least something to build off of, but not a lot of good stuff, like you said right now. I mean, really, Derek, I don't have a lot of confidence in really anybody on this defense right now. And the guys I do are injured, so I don't really know how to feel about this defense moving forward. But, yeah, one thing is for sure, Derek, the Colts got to figure it out because, I mean, they could easily be 0-3 here next week because Caleb Williams, while he's still a rookie, he definitely can do some stuff. And this Bears offense, for as flawed as it is, I mean, they could still run the ball. I mean, pretty much anybody can. So the Colts got to figure it out soon. And if not, man, I don't know. Gus Bradley's probably going to be gone pretty soon. I think a lot of changes might be incoming if it doesn't get better.
Yep, 100%. Well, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let us know your thoughts on this Colts defense and who's to blame and all that other stuff. But looking forward to those comments. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.